it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be doing, this is easily the biggest book haul I've ever done. I feel like that's definitely something I've said before, but like, I can't even hold all of these books because there are so many. So just a giant book haul. So this is what happens when I go like putting off filming for forever, that I have so many freaking books here. Like, I don't even know. I didn't bother counting. I'm not going to count. I think some of these, I'm actually filming 2 book hauls. That's the other thing. All the books on that shelf right there also need to be in a book haul, but that is going to be a romance specific book haul, which I think via my plans, I'm planning on putting up actually before this video, but because this one's bigger, I decided to film it first to just get it out of the way, rip the band-aid off, because I've been putting it off for way too long that things have just been piling up. And yeah, it's a situation, but I am like super excited about all of these books. I've kind of been resetting my bookshelves a little bit, really going through, so I will be doing an unhaul soon, but thinking about like what I actually want to read and going based on that and kind of picking up some new books based on that I'm really excited about. And it definitely has super helped out with like revitalizing my reading and everything. So I am glad that I ended up doing that. The first book that I have actually isn't a book, but I'm super excited about it nonetheless. It's more of a journal, and that is a Clockwork Reader reading journal. I'm so excited to have this. I'm just so happy. Like, I'm so proud of Hannah and everything that she's been able to accomplish, and to actually have a copy of this in my hands. Like, I remember her first telling me about it and showing me everything. I am just thrilled for her, and I actually got to see her for the first time in like 2 or 3 years. I don't even remember how long it's been, but when I went to California, I went to go and see her, and that's when she gave me a copy of it. So she signed it for me. But if you guys haven't checked this thing out, it is so cool. If you are a reader, it is like the perfect gift for any reader or for yourself. It is just a journal where you can like track all of your reading, and Hannah drew everything in here. It's absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see what's next for her. I really am so proud, and if you haven't checked this out, you definitely need to. For the rest of the pile, I'm just kind of going wherever anything is in the pile, so it might be a little bit chaotic, but like, what else do you expect from me at this point? So the first book that I have here is Nightcrawling by Leila Motley. This book is actually nominated, I believe it's for the Man Booker, and it is the youngest ever author to be nominated for that, which is super cool. I think I saw somewhere that she started writing this when she was like 17 or something like that, and now she's 21 and is nominated for a Man Booker prize, which is so incredible. Is it the Booker or the Man Booker? I can't remember, and probably people will be correcting me, but I never really pay attention to awards that much, and that's why I don't know. Even before this book's nomination, I had been seeing it kind of floating around everywhere because it has had a lot of hype for it, and the cover of it is really cool. I love the orange and the purple and everything. I think it's awesome, but this book deals with the American justice system at the heart of it, and nightcrawling is actually a thing. It's not something I have heard of, so I don't know if it's something that like actually exists, and forgive my ignorance if it is something, but it's something that the main character ends up getting involved in out of desperation. She is trying to like get by for her and her brother, and she ends up taking on this job that she desperately needs. That's when she ends up being witness to this whole thing, and like the events of the book start. So I really want to know why people have been talking about this so much, and hopefully y'all enjoy it too. Next is If You Could See the Sun by Anne Liang, and this was actually sent to me unsolicited from the publisher, so thank you to Inkyard Press for sending it my way. But this book is about it's a genre-bending YA debut about a Chinese American girl who monetizes her strange new invisibility powers by discovering and selling her wealthy classmates' most scandalous secrets. I actually love that. That seems so amazing. It's definitely a story that's going to deal with like race and class at the heart of it, and I love that idea, and I can totally see where it's genre bending, kind of like a little bit contemporary, but also a little bit like, I don't even know, magical, I guess. Seems like a really interesting and unique book. And this one is an ARC, so it is coming out October 11th, 2022. I did not cut my hair, by the way. It looks really short because I tried using a really tiny curling iron to curl it just out of curiosity. I'd seen someone on TikTok doing it and it looked really good, but it's just, it made it really short, and I don't really like how it turned out, but oh well. So next up is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. So I have actually read this book already, and I filmed a recent reads. Don't know when anything is going up right now. I'm just kind of trying to film things before I leave for California again. So it might be up. If not, it's coming. But this is a super hyped up book. It is like the ultimate sad girl reading book, and I ended up reading it so much more quickly than I was ever expecting. Like, I finished this book book in a day. And it was actually just a Sunday morning. Like, I started it Saturday night and I didn't get very far into it. I was kind of just like starting something new to try and fall asleep. And then, yeah, I ended up finishing it. And I really don't know how I felt about this one. I don't know if I liked it or not. It's such a weird and kind of uncomfortable read, but I didn't necessarily mind that. So I go more into depth in my recent reads video, which you should just go and watch that, because honestly, I have such a hard time articulating my thoughts on this book because it was just very different than anything that I've read. So next up, I actually have the book that I'm currently reading. Hopefully by the time you see this video, I'll be done it, but that book is My Imaginary Mary by the Lady Janies. Every time I pick up this book, I want to say My Contrary Mary, but that was the first book in the Mary series. But if you guys aren't familiar with the Lady Janies, it is Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, and they have written, like, this is their second series now. Their first series was focusing on different Janes. So the first book was Lady Jane Grey, the second book was Jane Eyre, and then the third book was, oh, what is her, why can't I think of it? All I can think of is Annie Oakley. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Calamity Jane, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I blanked on that. But the first book of the Mary series was My Contrary Mary, and that was Mary Queen of Scots. And now the second one is focusing on Mary Shelley. But you also have some famous side characters. So in this one, it's Ada Lovelace, which is really cool. So essentially this series is like, it's very unique because it's unlike any other historical fiction I've read before, where it's very satirical, and it kind of reminds me of Jane Austen in the way that the narration is kind of like poking fun at things. The narrator is kind of a character as well. It's just a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoy these series, and my least favorite is Calamity Jane. That's probably why I forgot it, but I think that's just because the time period doesn't really appeal to me all that much. But I'm really enjoying this one. I just have been so busy that I haven't had a lot of time to dedicate to reading, which is so sad because I'm hoping, like, I have an extra long weekend this weekend, so I really want to dedicate a ton of time to reading. So that's definitely what I'm gonna try and do when I have the free time and like everything else that I need to do is done. I just want to sit there and read so I can finish this book, because the books are kind of long, but they are always a lot of fun, and this one is no exception. So I am really liking it so far. Also, I forgot to mention, they all have kind of like a twist. So there's been ghosts in one, there's like characters that turn into animals in another, and in this one it's automatons. So you can kind of see where that goes with Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley's the author of Frankenstein, in case you didn't know that. But yeah, I've actually read like a handful of books here. I've read, I mean, there's so many that I haven't read all of them, but I've read a pretty solid amount. So I also have read Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. So this book, I once again kind of have mixed feelings on it. I think the writer has a really distinct writing style, and I just can't decide if I like it or not. But overall, the story I did find interesting, and I did, like, I would say overall that I enjoyed it. So this is another one that I have talked about in a recent reads video, so if you would be interested in that, if it's up already, I'll link it down below for you guys. But anyways, this story is about a young divorcee, and she's actually a romance script writer. So for like Hallmark movies and stuff, she's writing all of those scripts, and she has 2 kids, and she is pretty much the sole parent of the 2 kids. Like, their dad kind of ran off, and he like checks in and says he's gonna come back, but he never actually has. So she knows that, and she knew their relationship was kind of crumbling for a while, and she was happy with the divorce. Like, she was happy when he finally left. But now she's using their relationship and the failure of it, really, to write a new script. She wrote a script that ended up selling to this major like movie production company. That's the word I was looking for. And 2 of the most famous actor and actresses, they end up starring in it. So the actor that's playing her ex-husband, he ends up deciding that he's going to stay on her property. They're filming this at her house, and he decides, like, long after filming's done, that he's going to stay there. So it's kind of a love story between the 2 of them, but there's also like a lot of moving parts throughout it as well, and a lot of outside influences. I think the most surprising thing for me was that, like, the synopsis talks about the selling of the script, but like literally when you start the book, it's already happened. Like, they are already at her house and everything. So that's the only way I can kind of really think to describe the writing, is that it throws you headfirst into everything, and it kind of a little bit, it feels like one long run-on sentence, but like not necessarily in a bad way. It's not that I think like grammatically it was bad, it's just I really can't decide how I feel about it. It's just different than the typical writing style that I go for. I hope you know what I mean. But I do think this was a good read. It has been kind of hyped up. I'm not sure if I agree with all the hype for it, but I think it was like it was solid. Next is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and this is by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is actually translated from the Japanese. This is another book that I've seen all over the place, all over TikTok, definitely hyped up, and I have read it and included it in that kind of like hyped up recent reads video. This is about, it's basically like 3 or 4, I think 5 actually, short stories where you have different relationships and different people who are traveling back in time at this cafe for whatever reason. So it's kind of going over how the time travel works and everything and why these people are going and consequences of that. It's definitely a really interestingly written book, and I felt like it was very heartwarming in the end. I did really like it. It is a super, super quick read, not very long at all, and I can understand why this one is hyped. Like, I do understand it, and there is a sequel that I will probably pick up. This is the last one for a little bit that I have read. It's just because like when I filmed my recent reads, I put all the ones that I had already read back on top, but I also have finished reading The Summer of Bitter and Sweet by Jen Ferguson. This is a book that deals with an Indigenous character at the heart of it and deals with that culture, and it's actually set in Canada, which I thought was amazing. I was really excited about that, but it's a character who is going through like a lot. This young girl has seen, like, she just has so many things coming at her, and I didn't really understand the gravity of things when I was reading the synopsis. So basically, an old childhood friend of hers ends up coming back, and then she has just also broken up with her boyfriend, and then her father also comes back. But I didn't understand the context of her father coming back, so definitely be wary of trigger warnings before going into this one. But it was a really powerful read. Like, I haven't read many things like this before, and I definitely felt for the main character. I loved the culture throughout it. I thought that the author did a fantastic job of bringing that to the page, and overall it was like a really good read, but definitely a really difficult one at the same time. Next is Homegoing, and this book is by Ya Gyazi, and this book has been out for quite a while now, but it's one that I didn't necessarily think that I would read, but I think it actually will be something that I really enjoy. For some reason, like, I love historical fiction, but I mean, when I was reading YA, this didn't seem like something I would gravitate toward, and I still am reading YA, but as I'm kind of branching out into other things as well, I'm going back and I'm like, actually, no, these are books that I'd really want to read, and this is definitely one of them that stuck out to me. This book is set in Ghana in the 18th century, and it is following 2 half-sisters who are born in different villages and are completely unaware of each other. Pretty much usually if a book follows a character from a very young age until they're older, it makes me feel so connected to them that like I can't help but love it. This one I definitely think is going to be a difficult read, and I think like some of the best and my favorite historical fictions have been, so I am still excited for it. Next up, I have Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow, and this is another book that this one is spanning like a really long period of time. It's actually following the different generations of females in a Southern Black family. So you end up following 3 different generations and seeing how like one of the daughters ends up discovering that she has a secret that could save their family or change their family forever. So I'm not sure if that means it has like a magical element to it. I really don't know, but basically, yeah, it's a discovery that she has the power to change their legacy, so we'll see what that means. But I do really, really love this cover. I think it is stunning. Next up, I have the long-awaited and very highly anticipated Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid, I feel like, needs no introduction, really. I'm sure you know who she is, the author of Daisy Jones and the Six, 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then most recently, Malibu Rising. And this book is kind of playing off of Malibu Rising. So I don't think you have to have read Malibu Rising, but I have, and now I'm prepared for this one because Carrie Soto is actually a minor character in Malibu Rising. So you're first introduced to her there, but she is essentially a tennis star. She is this legendary athlete, and she is trying to have the comeback of the century when the whole world thinks she's past her prime. I am so intrigued by the character of Carrie Soto that like I really am excited for this one because she seemed like unlike other protagonists that I've read before. Taylor Jenkins Reid has kind of started like writing obviously a lot about celebrities, and now we have a sports celebrity here, so that's going to be really interesting. I'm just really excited to see more Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't think I love her books quite as much as everyone else, but I have enjoyed them, so I'm not expecting this one to be any different, and it did like just come out, so I feel like if I read it soon, I'll kind of know I'll be able to beat the hype, because usually if I beat the hype, then I can kind of have my own opinion, but sometimes when I wait too long, then it's really hyped up and then I just have too high of expectations. So gonna try and avoid that. Next is TJ Power Has Something to Prove, and this is by Jasmine Cordeo. This book is essentially about a girl who decides to subvert traditional beauty standards, and I love that already. So this follows TJ Power, obviously, and she is a high school debater, and she ends up becoming the subject of this really awful bullying meme. So she ends up fighting back by deciding to, like I said, subvert traditional Western beauty standards. She stops shaving, stops trying to be like the picture perfect girl that you would normally see in the media. And I just can't wait to see how that plays out. Like, that just seems like such an interesting and really important story. I feel like the message of it is going to be incredible. I'm just super pumped for this one. I also ended up picking up the next two books in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, because basically we were able to get some books from work, so I had to pick from like a certain list, and these were two that interested me. I haven't read A Good Girls Guide to Murder yet, but it definitely is on my list. Probably in the next, like, during fall, I will actually read it, but I am prepared with the sequels if I do desire to read the sequels, because we know sequels aren't always my favorite, but maybe this one, it will be one where I enjoy it. Next is Off the Record by Cameron Garrett. So I actually have read a book by Cameron Garrett before. I read Full Disclosure and I really liked it. And this book is, I think it's going to be a difficult read, but I am going to try to read it. So it is a #MeToo story and behind the scenes access as well. Like, it's dealing with a teen journalist and this Me Too story and seeing behind the scenes of that. So obviously with that in mind, it isn't going to be the easiest read, but I think that it's going to be powerful for sure. And I really love books that have like that punch to them. Next up is Bunny by Mona Awad. So Mona Awad has a couple of other books. All's Well is another one by her, and then she has a memoir, I believe, but I haven't read anything by her, but I have seen Bunny floating around quite a bit. And this definitely is like super out of my comfort zone, not something I would generally go for, but I figured why not? So I'm not really sure what to make of it based off the synopsis, to be honest. I know that it's dealing with a creative writing program and a character who's like trying to fit in. I don't know, there's like a clique of unbearably saccharine, is it saccharine? I don't actually know how to pronounce that word. I only like read it in my head. Do you ever have words like that? But yet sinister rich girls who call each other Bunny and seem to move and speak as one. But everything changes when the main character receives an invitation to the Bunny's fabled smut salon. Like, I really don't know what to think of this one, but it does seem kind of interesting. Next, I have In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I ended up picking this book up after I finished One Italian Summer because I did really like that book, and I know that this book came out a couple years before that one. My sister read it because I was sent a copy by the publisher, actually. My sister read it and really liked it. I had given her my copy, so I ended up buying myself one because I was like, well, I know that my sister really liked it and I liked her other books, so I might as well read this one. And this one, it does seem like something I would actually really like, so I don't know why I gave it away in the first place, but what can you do? So on this day where there are pretty much like there's a lot of really big life events happening for the main character, she had this really important job interview, she ends up accepting her boyfriend's proposal, she goes to sleep that night, and she ends up waking up the next day 5 years in the future and discovers that her life is completely different. She only ends up spending 1 hour in the future, but then when she wakes up back in the past, like everything was different. She was with a different man, she woke up next to a different man, she has a different ring on her finger. Like, obviously that's going to leave her reeling, so I'm really intrigued to see. I haven't seen a time travel story done like this, so it seems like a very, very different concept. I have the other ones in here that I will show you. Oh, here's another one. And then I don't know where the last one went, but for work, for taking photos of, I was sent Sally Rooney's books, and I thought that I might do a reading vlog with them. So I have Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You here, and then the other one that's missing, I can't think of what it's called, but I'll come across it at some point in the pile, probably near the end, because based on like where I'm looking, I think that's where it's going to end up. But Sally Rooney is an author I've heard a ton about, but I haven't read. I don't know. I'm really skeptical, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I know that she writes without using quotation marks, and that kind of bugs me. I will see. Like, I don't know if it's a stylistic choice or it actually is it makes sense. I don't know if it's just to be different or quirky. I don't know. That kind of puts me off a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, but she has so much hype surrounding her books that I feel like I need to know why all that hype is there. I also am not gonna lie, I know like 0% about what these are about, but yeah. I am going to go into it with an open mind. Like, don't mistake me, I'm not saying I'm not gonna like it right away. I think if anything, if the quotation mark thing is bugging me, I would just listen to the audiobook because then I don't have to pay attention to that. I am going in with an open mind and maybe I'll discover why everyone loves her so much. Next, I was sent A Wilderness of Stars by Shay Earnshaw, and this was sent to me by the publisher, so thank you very much to them. But this is the author of The Wicked Deep, and what was the other book? I just read it earlier this year. I can't think of what it was called, but basically this author writes really like witchy stories. Winterwood. That was the other one. So she writes really witchy stories, and I believe that this one is also a witchy story. Let's consult my notes. So it's a mysterious illness that's cursing a land that forces a teen girl astronomer to venture across the wilderness in search of the star's message that will hopefully save them all. So not really witchy from my understanding. It's more like astronomy and all of that. So that seems cool and like kind of a different change of pace for the author, which is cool. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say cool or awesome. I'm sorry. My vocabulary, very small apparently. Next up is The Girls by Emma Cline. The fact that I have this book now shows me how long it's been since I've done a book haul, because I ended up picking this book up right when I got back from California, which was like middle of July. And the reason I picked it up is because we went to a winery. We went to a few wineries, great day. But when we were having a tasting, this guy was talking about how like the daughter of the owners of the winery had written a book. He was like describing what it's about. And then I realized, I was like, oh, like I've seen that book. I remember seeing it when I worked at Indigo. It had first come out and I saw it everywhere. So it is about the Manson girls, and that intrigues me a lot. And just like that kind of connection, I was like, oh, that's so interesting that like I do know for a fact that like she knows Northern California well, and this book is about the Manson girls in Northern California, and this was like everywhere when it came out. So I was like, well, I totally forgot about that one, but that's definitely one that I need to check out. And now I'm glad that I have it, and I will be reading it hopefully soon. I will also say the wine was amazing. So if you're ever in Napa Valley, Cline Winery, really good. Next is Mom Jeans and Other Mistakes by Alexa Martin. So this one could have kind of been included in my romance book haul video, but the thing is, like, some of these books are romances, but they also can be like categorized as chick lit. I hate that term, but I don't know how else to really describe it. So I just decided to kind of like draw the line somewhere to split things up. And this one is described as more of like women's fiction chick lit, but it does seem like really fun because I get why it's not a romance, because it's about two best friends. So two best friends, essentially, they end up saying I do to living together. I think that seems amazing. Like two friends who are living together. I'm not sure if they have kids or what, but they don't have much in common, but they've been best friends since the 3rd grade, and now they're broke, single, and doing the only thing that makes sense, moving in together, just like they talked about when they were teenagers. Except when they were younger, the plan didn't include a 5-year-old and more baggage than their new townhouse can hold. This seems like it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I am really looking forward to this one. Next is Sirens Muses by Antonia Angris. This book is about 4 artists who are drawn into this web of rivalry and everything at this elite New York art school. So it's set at an art school. I think it's kind of like dark academia, maybe light academia. I haven't really seen any reviews. I had seen it kind of popping around when it came out, but it seemed like an interesting sort of read. I'm sorry I keep on saying interesting and literally the same 5 words over and over again. I can't help it. Next is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is kind of a book I never really expected that I would have, but it's one that I'm kind of willing to give a chance. It's really out of my comfort zone because I'm not really into thrillers, and this one is a psychological thriller, at least from my understanding. It's like set at a college, so this is dark academia, I believe. I don't want to say that too confidently and then I'm wrong, because that's usually what happens. But this book, like, I know everyone has read it, everyone knows about it, but I obviously haven't read it, and I didn't think I ever would, but I'm willing to give it a go. I've heard such amazing things that maybe this fall, that will be the time to read it. The one thing I hate about, like, this is gonna sound like I'm a baby, but the one thing I hate about going from reading YA all the time to going to adult is the font is so small, and also the spacing is so small, so it always feels like they take me so much longer. Next is Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. This is kind of another book I feel like I've seen floating around. You know, sometimes there's just those books that like catch your eye and in the back of your mind you see them all the time. This is one of them. So I don't know if this is one that I've kind of seen on TikTok, if it's hyped up there or what, but I've definitely seen it. I know for sure that this book deals with sex at the core of it. It deals with a 20-something-year-old who is living in New York and is trying to find sexual freedom, and it's dealing with sex and sexuality. And the book is just kind of about the character's like own desires and her learning to kind of follow those things. So I really don't know like what to think of that. I am so scared to see how long this video is going to be. Editing it is going to be my worst nightmare, but whatever. So next up is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This book is so light. Like, it's lighter than I thought it was going to be based on how thick it is. I don't know what paper they used to print it or what, but it's quite light for the like girth of it. I don't want to say that word, but I just did anyways. This book is about a teenager in the early 1900s who ends up falling for a wealthy stranger. She then finds out that she's pregnant, but then she also finds out that he's married. And so the like epic saga, I guess, of this book begins. This is definitely one that has been talked about quite a bit. It was a finalist for the National Book Award. It's set from the bustling street markets to the halls of Japan's finest universities to the pachinko parlors of the criminal underworld. I don't know, I really don't know what to make of this one, but I do want to know why it has had like such longevity and so many people talking about it. Next is There by Tommy Orange. This book is following 12 different characters as they are all traveling to this big powwow in Oakland. Why do I have two books set in Oakland? That's so random. I don't think I've ever like read anything set in Oakland, but yeah, they're traveling to the big Oakland powwow. So this is dealing with, as it says, the plight of the urban Native American, grappling with a complex and painful history with an inheritance of beauty and spirituality, with communion and sacrifice and heroism. I've seen this book around like quite a bit, and it definitely, once I actually found out more like what it was about, was immediately on my radar. Next, I have Master of Iron by Trish Levenseller. This is the sequel to, what is the first book? Blade of Secrets? It's actually the second book in the duology, and that book, basically the series is dealing with a bladesmith with magical powers, but also she has social anxiety, and she has ended up like setting off this chain of events, making this very powerful weapon that she is trying to keep out of the wrong hands. So there's a whole team of them. Her sister she's very close with. They are trying to like protect everyone and save the world, as you would expect from a YA fantasy. I really loved Tricia Levenseller. I enjoyed the first book of this so much, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading this one. They absolutely fly by, so when I'm needing a quick read, I feel like I'll be picking this one up. Next is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This cover, like the gold foil, is just stunning. But I had kind of been interested in this book, and then when I was at Hannah's, I saw that she actually had it, and she said she thought I would like it. So then that sealed the deal for me, and I finally picked it up. This is set in Tehran in 1953, and it is set at this literary oasis, a stationery shop. It essentially ends up being the safe haven for people while their neighborhood is in political upheaval. I feel like I've read books like that mostly deal with bookstores like that or libraries. A stationery shop is a different take on that. Next, I have Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. This came out recently, and it is a YA fantasy that, like, I feel like most YA fantasies haven't really sparked my interest lately, but this one definitely did. So it's about like a morally gray witch character. It says on the back, kings and curses, girls and gods, these are the making of tales. So it kind of seems like a modern day sort of fairy tale. I mean, except fantasy, if that makes sense. But not only does it deal with a morally gray witch, you also have a cursed prince and their prophecies, fates intertwining. That really is never a miss for me. Next is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I haven't read anything by Gabrielle Zevin before, but I don't think, did I ever haul it or is it here? I must have hauled it, but I did recently pick up The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry because I have heard so many good things about that one, but I haven't read it yet. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow I also have heard incredible things about, but it is one that, once again, I haven't read yet. I have just seen this one like everywhere, and it definitely has made me more intrigued about it. It is a romance, but like I feel like I couldn't include this in my romance haul because it seems like more than that. It is about two friends, and as it says on the inside, who are often in love but never lovers. So I don't know if it's going to be like a friends to lovers sort of deal, which I am such a sucker for, so like I'm kind of hoping that it is. But either way, they end up becoming video game partners and like creative partners, and I want to read this book so badly, but I think it's definitely one where like it has so many words in it, okay? Like I love reading, but I also am so impatient, which is, I mean, probably part of my ADHD, where I don't want to read something that like it's gonna take me too long because my attention just drifts. Maybe with my medication though, I will be able to read it. I don't know. Either way, I will get to this one eventually, I promise. I just don't know how. Oh my God, we are on the last pile and I need to move it over because like it's so far from me, because I literally have had 3 piles of books in front of me. This is ridiculous. But next up is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. So this novel is definitely going to be a really hard one. It is about a forbidden union between 2 young enslaved men in a deep South plantation, and the refuge that they find in each other, the relationship that they have. Like even when you just hear that, I feel like my heart already starts breaking, because I know it's just going to be a really sad story, and one that definitely like will make me think, one that will stay with me. So I think I'll have to be in the right mindset to read this one. It's not going to be an easy one, but I think it's one that I will remember forever after having read it. Next is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This cover just intrigued me because it's so beautiful, and I really love, like, I love the ocean. I'm terrified of it, but like I love the creatures in it. And this is about like octopi. It's a charming, witty, and compulsively readable exploration of friendship, reckoning, and hope that traces a widow's unlikely connection with a giant Pacific octopus. I don't know what to think of that. Like, what? But all the reviews for this book are absolutely incredible. They are raving about it. It's like all 5 stars. So it definitely, I was like, no, I need to add this to my cart, and I need to see, why do people love this one so much? So it's one that I'm gonna try and get to soon, so then I can really see what all this hype is about. Next, I picked up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid has like quite a few books, but I've only read Daisy Jones, and Evelyn Hugo and Malibu Rising. And then soon, like, I'll read Carrie Soto. And then I know she has more, like, they're kind of, I feel like, romance stories, but I hadn't really been intrigued, but then I kind of was seeing some quotes from this one floating around. And after having read Every Summer After, I was looking for, like, all the childhood friends to lovers books. And this is one that came up. And this seems like it's gonna be wild, like, because essentially she ends up getting married, like, falls in love with this guy. They're high school sweethearts, they get married, and then on their first wedding anniversary, okay, so he has like this job assignment and he ends up going missing on it. He just disappears in a helicopter over the Pacific. So then she ends up quitting her job and moving back to where she was from to try and like put her life back together. And she finally does. She gets engaged, and then her husband ends up reappearing. So I'm like, what? Like, that seems like literally 2 true loves. That's literally, I can't. That's gonna be a twisted web, but like, I do want to read this one very soon. Next is We Weren't Looking to Be Found by Stephanie Kuhn. I saw this book on Indigo, and I think I talked about it in that video that I did where I was shopping for out of my comfort zone books. I can't remember, or I kind of started to film a romance one and then never finished it, so maybe it was that one. Either way, this cover totally drew me in. It got me, like, I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I do it all the time, and I will be honest about that, especially when the cover is this beautiful. But anyways, the synopsis is quite vague. It kind of just says that it's like about 2 friends, 2 young girls who have 2 disparate stories and one unlikely friendship. So kind of 2 characters who are coming from very different sides of things and end up becoming friends, and it's about like their friendship and everything. I do really enjoy friendship stories, so honestly, just based on the cover, this was one I was just willing to go into, and I was like, well, we'll see. Worst case, I have a beautiful cover here. I have no room on my floor. I've been throwing the books down, not throwing them, they're fine, I promise, but I just don't have any room. So cleaning up after this video is gonna suck, but as I said, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I have this one as well. And the next book that I have is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is set in Seoul, Korea, and it's basically dealing with the beauty standards there and like the impossibility of them. You're following 4 different women who are battling those beauty standards as they grow up and everything. I have heard amazing things about this one. This cover is also really stunning, and it seems like just such an interesting sort of story. I'm really excited for it. Next is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This is one that was around like a few years ago, but like I said, I wasn't really reading adult historical fiction, so it's one that I kind of had on the back burner for one day, and I was like, now one day is here. This book has pretty much nothing but like immaculate reviews, and I believe it's kind of a different reimagining of The Underground Railroad, where it's like an actual railroad. You're following one woman who is freeing herself from the bondage that she has been in for years. So once again, expecting a very powerful story, a very difficult one to read, but I think that it's again one that's going to stick with me. We are so close to the end here, I promise. But next is The Gunkel by Stephen Rowley. I don't think that this one is a romance book, even though it kind of has a cover that might like indicate that based on the colors and everything. It's more so a family sort of story, because it makes me think of Raising Helen, I think is the name, but then apparently there's another movie that is a similar concept, but I've only ever, or at least remember, Raising Helen. But you have gay Uncle Patrick, GUP for short, and he loves his niece and nephew, but then they have experienced this tragedy and he ends up taking over unexpectedly as their primary guardian. He also is like an actor, so it's just kind of this really interesting character who ends up being a parent who wasn't expecting to. And I've heard amazing things about this one. It's definitely been on my radar, so I'm super happy to finally have a copy of it. Next, I picked up Places We've Never Been by Casey West. It's been a little bit since I've read a Casey West book, but she has so many YA contemporaries, and I tend to kind of like either love them or hate them, so I'm hoping obviously that this is one that I'm going to love, especially because it's childhood friends to lovers again, and this is a case where they go on a road trip together, so that seems like a ton of fun and something I will enjoy. I love this cover, like it's so pretty, and the whole deal is like friends to enemies to lovers. So I've never really read anything, I probably have, but like nothing comes to mind where they were friends first and then enemies and then lovers, so that's a fun concept. Okay, and now the final 3 books that I have here, I have so many copies of these books, and I have to do an unhaul, and I have ended up with like 4 copies of these books, and I don't know why. At least these 2 I have like 3 or 4 copies of. So I was doing a little like Instagram partnership and they sent me them, so I have the finished copies of these. Okay, so those are all the books for this book haul here. So many, I know, I'm sorry. I hope that I didn't talk too much, but thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in another new video soon. Bye!